Get started. Greetings, everyone. Welcome to the Agile Austin Leaders Special Interest Group, October 7, 2022 edition. Yay. I always like to say the full thing, so we're sure that we're in the right spot. And I'll first start up with saying, for everybody that might not be aware and is just joining, this is recorded. We will be posting it on our Agile Austin YouTube channel. And so if you don't want to be recorded, turn off the camera, change your name. It'll be as if you were never here, okay? This is within the Agile Austin umbrella. This special interest group is within the Agile Austin umbrella. Our main focus is always to connect, collaborate, grow around Agile principles and values. That's it. We come together, we share knowledge, best practices, and specifically here in this one, and I have the power to mute people. Isn't that awesome? Hey? My wife would like that power over me. Definitely so. So, Max Akesi, I am a senior manager at PayPal in the IT organization. I have lived in Austin for 22 years now. I've grown with the city, and I have been involved in Agile Austin for 12 years now, since 2010. That's actually when we started this leader special interest group. And now I've been involved on the board in Agile Austin, and I'm actually presently the president of Agile Austin. What I tell people all the time is go ahead and put something in chat, right? We have people that are joining from all over the place. So I will start it off by saying, hey, happy Friday, my title, LinkedIn. Put whatever you want, how you feel, job opportunities at your company, if you're searching, blah, blah, blah. What we do here specifically in this SIG, the scope of this SIG is that we share best practices around leading Agile transformations. Again, it's all about leading Agile transformations. That's why it's the leader SIG. For folks that it might be the first time you attend. And we meet the first Friday of every month. This has been going on for 12 years. And I think that what's the most powerful thing about having been involved, founding this and being involved for 12 years is that I have seen the evolution of topics and discussions and trends. And I remember still, as if it was yesterday, the first leader SIGs we were talking about how can we help train people to estimate in story points. Oh, it was like so stressful. How can we organize teams to do some kind of multi-sprint planning because some large enterprise might have to plan beyond the sprint. All of these very tactical things. Fast forward to now, we're talking about psychological safety. We're talking about communication. We're talking about team empowerment, autonomy, intrinsic motivation, all these phenomenal things that we have understood that you need when leading an Agile transformation. It's so much about people. It's so much about people. So, hold on. I'm not going to say much about sponsorships and all that. The key thing is if you want to become a member of Agile Austin and see what the benefits are, if you want to be a sponsor, agileaustin.org. Our website is phenomenal. We just revamped it like a year and a half ago. And yes, all the information is there. And of course, it could never be possible without our actual sponsors. I'm going to drop here in the chat some links to our sponsors and everything. These are our annual sponsors. If anybody's ever interested in the annual sponsorship and find out more about it, please feel free to ping us when you go to the site, okay? And I tell people the best thing to do if you want to stay in touch with all the SIGs, meetups that we have is just sign up on the meetup page, subscribe to Agile Austin on a meetup. We do about 5 to 7 sessions every month. People get a lot of value for this, and sometimes they want to support us and join as a member for $35 a year. But I would just tell people, if you just knew, if you want to find out, just subscribe to the meetup, and you will find out about, if you're interested in the book that is being discussed in the book club, if you're interested in coaching specifically, our coaching SIG is extremely established, and we have all sorts of speakers that come to that, from Bob Galen to folks from around the world. This Leader SIG has been going on for 12 years, right? Subscribe, you'll get all the alerts. And we have a bunch of them, the Agile at Scale, Scrum, a master, stuff like that. We are trying to start up a product SIG. It feels that the product side is where we've always had a little bit more of a challenge to be established. So if you ever know of anybody that has a true product passion and, would just like to talk to us about doing some things, we're all ears. Board members, I'm just going to say, I'm the president. Steve, Angela, Ben are awesome. Scott is our treasurer, but he's one of the founding members of Agile Austin. It's awesome to have people that have just joined the organization just a year or two ago, and people that were here from the start in 2007. It's such a good mix. And for any comments, questions, board@agileaustin.org. Feel free to contact us. Volunteering, folks. I think it's always awesome when someone has some time and wants to get involved, wants to connect with other Agilists. Feel free to ping us. I put the link also in the chat. Okay. Today we have Tommy. I'm not gonna talk about Tommy now because he's gonna introduce himself and talk to us about coaching and leading a growing company. The only thing I'm gonna say about Tommy is that Tommy probably has the role/job title that I would love to have one day as a CAO, a Chief Agility Officer. The only thing, Tommy, is that you gotta help me create that role at PayPal. Okay, so first, if I want to have a role, the role has to exist, or something like that. Then on November 9th, we have our Keep Austin Agile Conference. Folks, if you have not heard about it yet, if you would like to hear more about it, I put the link in there. We have awesome speakers. Tommy is speaking at it. We've got people from PayPal, BP, a bunch of companies, consultants, and everything. And it's going to be a hybrid conference, both in person and virtual, because we understand that our membership at Agile Austin is not only across the US, it's across the world. We have paid members from across the world, so we have to cater to a global audience. That's just the world we're in. And awesome sponsors, can't go through all of them. PayPal is title sponsor. I'm proud of that, but that's enough with that plug, okay? Oh, and I've got the shirt on. Look, we've got special edition Keep Austin Agile shirts. The armadillo is our mascot for it. Also happens to be the state animal, etc., etc. Or one of them. I think there are a few of them. So again, I put the link there for the conference. Check it out, please. Tickets are going to be sold out soon. With no further ado, I would like to introduce our speaker for the day for our October SIG. Coaching and leading a growing company. Tommy Norman. Coaching and leading a growing company. Round of applause. Yeah. It's kind of hard. Come on. Oh, hands up, folks, virtually. Do it. Yes, we can do it. There you go. Tommy, talk to us.
All right. If you could let me share. There we go. Let me share my screen. We'll get into it. Thanks, everybody, for joining today. So you guys should see my screen now for coaching and leading a growing company. Awesome. I'm going to put chat up and I will try to keep an eye on it, or hands raised. Max, if I miss anybody, just yell at me, but I encourage questions throughout. I'd love for this to be as interactive as possible. Awesome. So just real quick about myself. Again, I'm Tommy Norman. I am the Chief Agility Officer at Acklen Avenue. We are also a sponsor of the Keep Austin Agile. Colleen, who you see on there, works with me, and she works with Max at Austin Agile, and also is an Austin person itself. I'm here in Nashville, where our home office is. As Max said, I am the Chief Agility Officer here. My job is to make sure that every aspect of this company is embedded with Agile values and principles. I help build our delivery process and how we build and put things out. I worked with HR, for years and building that out. I'm now kind of part of the sales organization and building that out. So it is a really interesting position. And I do think, there's a great book by Steve Peacock now that is about going from Agile coach to Chief Agility Officer. And I had a chat with him, and he said I was the first person he talked to that actually did the job that he is describing. So he and I are working on some stuff on that as well. And then also, if you do come to Nashville, I have my own group, Agile Nashville. We are not as nearly as organized as Max and his team, but that's because I was lazy. I ran a .NET user group where we had board members and all this stuff. We did all those things. And then when Agile Nashville was actually run by somebody else and it started to falter, and I was like, we should bring that back together. And he said, you totally should do that. So I took it over, and I was like, I need the simplest, easiest way to run this. So we have facilitated discussions. So we don't bring in speakers. It is a group discussion. It's facilitated. I kind of draw everything out as we're talking about it. The group votes on what they want to talk about. But it's a lot of fun. We've come back to in person, and it's been going really great. So if you're ever in town, there's second Monday of every month, agilenashville.com. You can sign up. We also have a great local conference as well. It's actually, I started one called Music City Agile, but it's now part of a much larger one called Music City Tech, which is 3 conferences: Music City Code, Music City Data, and Music City Agile, the part that I run. We didn't run this year, but we'll be back next fall. And that's a nice, good one. It's about 3 days, lots of national, regional, local speakers. And then lastly, if you like what you hear here and you are lucky enough to have one of those companies that has O'Reilly Learning online accounts, which used to be Safari Books Online, I have a lot of videos. I do a lot of online training with them. So if you do, you can check that out. I'll have links to all of this at the end so you can connect to that. So enough of that. Let's start talking about what we're going to do today. But I want to give a quick poll. I didn't have time to get these polls into Zoom. That would have been nice. So you can just put in your number in chat. I want to know what everybody's role is. I saw a lot of people putting their stuff in there, but do we have anybody who's actually in an executive or senior leadership position? Are you an executive level Agile coach, a team Agile coach, a director or manager level? 5, like a practitioner. I'm a member of a team, an Agile team, or anything like that. Or 6, another. And if it is another, just let me know. This information is good for everybody, but it's always interesting to kind of see what everybody's got. Looks like we've got a really good mix. I see numbers from all over there in there. Fantastic. So like I said, this is kind of for everyone, because I also think, and I think Max said it earlier, you can lead from any position. But what I'm going to talk about today affects everyone at every level. So what I want to talk about is a little bit, kind of how I got to this point. So when I started, working, I've been doing this for 30 years now. I've worked from little mom and pop shops to big, multi-billion-dollar, dozens of thousands of people all around the world, different companies. I've worked with little startups that had just, only been around for a year, or their ideas just did. Or I've been with companies that have been around for hundreds of years, 100 years. I've worked with companies that haven't really made a profit yet. I'm still trying to figure that out, to multi-billion dollars. And I've worked as, sometimes I was just, a boots on the ground guy. Sometimes I was consultant. But then I started working I've been a dev manager. I've been a QA manager. I've been a director. And now, excuse me, for the last 6 years, I've been part of the executive team here at Acklen. And what that experience is given me, other than, an ulcer, is seeing lots of patterns emerge. Everybody's unique, but everybody's the same. The problems I had over here when I went to the next place, they're having the same problems. It's unique to them, but a lot of this is similar over time. And also, as I started seeing these patterns, and sometimes later than I would like to admit, I started recognizing that I would see them again and go, man, if I had just learned from the last time I did that, I would have seen this a little bit better, and I could have been better prepared for it. And so the other thing is, then I started finding that these patterns, I'm not, I wasn't a genius. I didn't come up with these patterns myself. Smarter people than me had recognized them, that they've been around forever and had written books and content and very deftly illustrated these models. And, later in my career, I started being introduced to a lot more of these. And the one that really struck me the most was this one called The Climb from a company called Zuora. And I'll get a little bit more in detail in it, but it got introduced to me. I used to work at a company called LeanKit. Some of you may have heard of that. They got bought by PlanView, which I believe is down there in Texas, Austin as well. This is one that got brought in by our CRO. And it was really interesting. It's now the way they talk about it, because they're usually investment people and stuff like that. They talk about growing in money, and I'm going to take all that out. We're going to take all that out, and we're just going to talk about these different levels of where you are as a company. When you start at the very beginning, I have an idea and I want to get it out in the world. Then you get your idea out in the world and a couple of people think it's great. Okay, now I have to build a product around that. Now I've built a product, and now is there more than just a couple of people that are going to do that? I have to prove my market. Okay, now I've proven a market. I've got a bunch of people, but now I have to grow up and put my big boy pants on and be a real business. And I have to actually have business things in there. Once I have that business, then you start getting the tricky position of, when we were small, we probably had this great culture and this great vision and values. When I grow into a big business, can I keep those? And will those keep me aligned enough to stay in business? And if you're lucky enough to stay in business past 10 years, which, only 25% of the companies out there do, can I become, a leader in the industry? Can I start forming alliances and I become kind of the center of other businesses that start working around me? And this is growth into, again, Zuora talk about growth into $1 billion company, but I see these stages. I'm going to focus on the first couple of ones, the first 4 here. But really what I loved about what they talked about was switchbacks, which was, where you are now and where you're going to be. And sometimes what you're doing to prove one thing, when you go to prove the other thing, you have to almost be an entirely different company. Your approach is different. The people might be different. And this was really interesting, because when I first joined LeanKit, for an example, we were at that prove the idea. They had proven the idea. They'd gotten, customers. They were now at the product. And so, we went through proving the product, and then they did a switch back where they had to change their market. They had brought me in. I was a big Scrum guy at the time, and they thought they were going to move into the Scrum market. But as they started proving their market, they decided, you know what? I can chase all these Scrum people, Rally and Jira and version 1 for years and still be, number 3 or 4 in the market. We're going to drop that. We're going to pursue the lean market, which was a little, upsetting for me as a Scrum guy, but then I became a lean and Kanban guy, and that's what I did for them. Then, they got a bunch of money, big investment capital, and they started hiring people to really prove the business. Marketing got filled out, sales got filled out. That was one of the biggest changes right there. And then I exited the company because they got bought by PlanView, and, not all of us were needed, because PlanView says we don't do Agile coaching, and I was an Agile coach. And this was really interesting, and seeing, and all the time we were doing this, our CEO was kind of bringing up this model and talking about the switchback, what it looks like. We had our CEO, when we kind of got out of the prove the market and started getting to prove the business, he left. He's a serial entrepreneur. He doesn't like sitting around figuring out how to do expense reports and how to, do cost analysis, blah, blah, blah. He didn't like that. So he left, and that was a good thing. And, when they got bought by PlanView and really started to become a bigger part of this, some people exited. And that was probably a good idea too, because they weren't necessarily going to be great for that new type of the business. And, as I went to companies after that, or worked with companies after that, I would kind of, start thinking about, where do I think they are in this path? And it changed a lot of things for me. So like with sometimes we would be offering services that I'm like, hey, these aren't good for people who are at the prove the idea stage. They need a different type of service than we offer. And then maybe some of our services don't scale well to some of the people out here. Maybe this is our good target region. These are the people we're talking to. So it's not only important to know where I am, it's important to know if you do offer services and products, where are your customers? Where are they? What customer is at the best position for you and what you offer? And so these insights were really good for me. And like I said, I started using them internally. And, I went, when I came to Acklen was at the prove the idea stage, and we were making that switch back. And we've gone through a lot of this. And I used a lot of what I learned from these other places and used this model with the executive team when we had to go through growing pains to say, hey, this is not new, but here's things we need to think about. And so I found that really helped us focus. It also helped us when we talk about our target customers is where do we want them to be on this journey as well. So there's not just this model, there's lots of models out there. And I started seeing these models, they all kind of line up, not exactly, but there's a lot of overlap on them. And some of them are looking at a different aspect of the company at each point in time. And so I started researching some of these models and trying to figure out how did they all work together so I could make these better decisions as I, coach a company through this, as I lead a company through this, or as a person who's experiencing these changes. How do I deal with it? So that's what I want to do for this session. So I'm going to introduce you to these models. It's going to be a little, superficial. I'll go a little bit deeper into the Zuora one because that was kind of the one that sparked this for me. So it'll be more of an introduction. So you can leave with kind of saying, that one struck a chord with me. I'm going to research that one. I'm going to talk about how I see them aligning, and then talk about the needs and opportunities in each stage. And again, it's going to be a little bit at a high level because we only have an hour. But what I'm hoping is it piques your interest and you see the same thing I did of like, hey, this helps me either visualize or express a lot of patterns and things I've seen as a company grows. So let's get into the models. So the Zuora one. Yep.
Sorry, just
no
before
worries.
you get into the details, because I just want to get a clarification on when you say a growing company, like growth, right? I mean, my first thought was growth in numbers, but then you showed growth in dollars. And some people could be growth from customers. And I think when you say growth, you're kind of generically speaking about all these different growths, right? Because
certain models will speak to certain things. Like one of the models we'll talk about will be about funding. One of the models we'll talk about crisis of leadership and things like that. So, when I say growth, in this terms, I'm kind of using it generically. You'll hear me, because of the model, talk about one thing or another. I try to keep it away from money. Just because, but it does. As you grow, you should be making more money. And also, even though I'll be talking to companies that are probably starting for zero and growing through the first 4 stages, you will see a lot of patterns. A lot of companies kind of regrow, like they start something new. I've been at companies where they kind of said, they were a big company already at a certain point, and they kind of had to shake things up. And when they shook things up, they kind of had to go back through these growing stages a little bit. So it applies at a different level.
Got it. Thanks.
So absolutely. And again, ask questions at any time, and I'll hang around afterwards too, to answer questions and discuss it more. Cause I want this, I'd love to hear other people's. This is really kind of mostly my own experience, but I know I'm not alone in this. As I said, this Zuora the Climb was the first one that really struck to me, and not because it's a Miley Cyrus song. It has nothing to do with Miley Cyrus. But just because it came at a time where I was, having more leadership responsibility, where I was, moving more into executive coaching and coaching at that level. And it's scary, when you have multi-million dollars and hundreds of people's livelihoods in your hands. I didn't get trained to be a manager. I was a developer. I went to school to be a pilot and wasn't a very good one, and then got into software development. So this helped me a lot kind of think, about the business, and not like budgets and things like that, but just growing a business and how good things happen. So this it was introduced in 2015. I'm not going to try to say Tien Zhu, I think is how you say it, but I probably butchered it. He's the CEO of Zuora, but he came from Salesforce. He and some other people from Salesforce after exited there. He was an exec at Salesforce. And he's the one who introduced this model. They have some presentations about it that will go into it deeper. Again, it focuses a lot on money, but it's still a great presentation. And the main thing is those switchbacks. Each point, when you hit one of these points after you've proven something and you go to another one, that switchback is where a lot of change happens. And, we like to embrace change. We are, if we're an agile coach, we are change agents, but change is scary. Change can be good, change can be bad, depending on what we're doing with it. And the switchback idea was really what I liked about it. So let me talk about a little bit about this that I'm going to go into a little bit more than the other ones. So let me talk about these growth stages real quick. One is that first one, prove the idea. I've got a great idea for a product. And this is when you go and you get some of your own money, your credit cards, your angel investors, your friends and family investment. And your first thing is just, I need to get this idea out there. You're either trying to get a quick and dirty prototype. Sometimes you're vaporware. Sometimes you have a proposaltation that shows what your product's supposed to do, but you're trying to get something out there and get your first initial sales. You get a couple of sales, you get that quick and dirty thing out there that people are buying. And now, okay, this idea is taking hold. But now that quick and dirty is not enough. Now I have to prove the product. Now I have to build, I have to pay for the sins I might have, in technical debt and things like that I might have done to get this out there. I may have to do a rewrite at this point in time. We get a lot of clients like that. And I have to make my product, and I have to also start expanding my product. Maybe I had, I've seen a lot of companies that are a one-trick pony, and they do that trick really well. But if you want to start being bigger, I have to start listening to my customers. I have to start getting, that feedback and having a product that allows me to quickly put things out there. Once you got a good product, you got a good platform, then you're having to prove the market. I can't just sell to 3 people. That, I have to expand that market. This is also a time when you might let go of some markets. You might realize, I don't think that's the type of client I should be servicing anymore. That's a really hard decision. To let some markets go, to let some good clients who got you here, people who are at that first prove the idea stage may not be the same people. Once you've proven that market and you've really expanded the market, now you kind of have to prove your business. You have to be grown-ups. So many places I've seen passionate people who are, very passionate practitioners of some practice or product, and they build a product around that, but they weren't trained to be a business person. And so once they really have now this growth, they need to bring in people who know how to run business. And it's a really critical time because a company's culture is formed around the passion people have. But when you hire a new chief revenue officer or a new COO or anybody like that, they're coming in because of their skill in that thing. And hopefully they're aligned with your values, things like that, but they didn't come because they were passionate about whatever you do. Maybe they are, maybe they aren't. And it can change the entire trajectory of a company's culture. And it's a very critical time. When you get in that, prove that vision, that's a very important one. So once we've got a business, we're very grown up. I've got a great idea. I've got a good customer base. I've got a solid product. We have business, all the things that we need to have to be a mature business are there. But now your vision and your values come into play. Are they going to sustain you? Can you keep this up? Can you keep growing on top of that? And then again, what you're trying to get to is, I want to be the industry leader in whatever I'm doing. And to get to that point where you're proving industry, it becomes less about kind of the individual customers, stuff like that. It's still very important, but it's about alliances. It's about, these companies that support you and feed you, or that you, support as well. And that takes a little bit different thinking. You're maybe growing by merger and acquisition and those types of things. So I very much identified with these because I had seen a lot of these over and over again. And I had seen a lot of the same things over. Like, you're right, that, when you're in this great growth stage, I see a lot of the same problems that I don't see in these other ones. So let me talk about some of these other models. And again, this is gonna be high level. There's links in all of these. I'll give this presentation to Max. You guys can download it and explore more. And I would encourage you to do that. So Greiner's growth model, it's been around since 1972. This is the oldest one. He updated it in 1998 with some more information. Larry Greiner, he's from a professor at USC. It's different approaches to growth. So, I grow through this, I grow through that. And it starts hinting at the types of things that get you through each one of these stages. Then it also talks about the associated potential crisis at each one. And it's these switchbacks. When you go from one stage to another, there is a potential crisis. And I'll talk a little bit more about these later, because it really goes with that switchback metaphor really well. And this one's probably the one that's, it's been around the longest. It has the most stuff. It's taught in business classes, et cetera, et cetera. The next one that I got introduced a lot is I worked a lot with some startups. And so Steve Blank wrote this, 2005, a book of 4 Steps to Epiphany. He's an entrepreneur, serial entrepreneur, a teacher at Stanford. And it was the search for a business model. Talking about it, the very first part of this, you're doing customer discovery. Does anybody give a crap about this idea? And then customer validation of making sure that the customers are interested. What more can I do for them? And then you go into customer creation, which is expanding the market and company building. And when you lay that on top of the other model, it kind of looks very similar. They also expanded it. So Max Marmer from the Startup Genome worked with a lot of what Steve had, and he also kind of put funding models on top of that. So usually, at these first stages, you're doing, personal investing, angel investing. Then you get to one of these stages. Usually that's about when you're looking at Series A funding. And then when you get to your business growth stage, that's when you're looking at B and C type funding. And so, yes, Agile is great and it's about people, but we all coach businesses and that's about money. And so understanding how money plays into this, I thought was a very, very interesting thing too, because especially if you're a leader or an Agile coach, at some point in time, that's the language you have to be able to speak, because that's the one that certain people are listening to.
And Tommy, I mean, like, if I may, I think that a certain power that I've used in Agile that really connects with a lot of people is customer value. And because it's not just because it's one of the values, the Agile values in the manifesto, but it connects with people, right? All of a sudden, because all the talk of business is some of the IT and product folks, they get lost sometimes. But when it's about like, be customer centric, think customer centric at any possible time, get customer feedback. Even just if you look at the clicks on your site, like that's feedback, right? You do that, and that has really helped a lot of people, kind of direct products and whatever to customer needs. And that's a very powerful thing that sometimes gets lost a lot of times in large corporations, like that customer centric approach.
And to add top of that, Max, even when you're talking about like, so when I asked where people were, asked if you were an executive coach or a team coach, and that was on purpose, because if you're a team coach, a lot of times I've heard team coaches say things like, I don't care if we make money, I just care that everybody's happy. Well, you know what? That's great. But if we don't care about money and everybody has to go home in a year because we are fiduciary, irresponsible, nobody's going to be happy. So somebody has to keep an eye on that ball. It all gets, if don't make dollars, don't make sense at some point in time.
Yes.
But so getting more into the Agile. So when you look at Agile Fluency, and again, these don't map exactly, but you'll see a lot of the patterns there in a second. So this is probably the one you're most aware of. It came from, in 2012, this was James Shore and Diana Larson. I have their books back here somewhere on my shelf. And this is more about shifts and focus. But you'll see in all these models, it talks about you go from this and you go to this, these shifts, these changes, these transformations, and from one focus or one part of this growth to another. And in those shifts and those changes of focus is a very critical thing. And I think it's really important that, not only while we're in it, understanding it, but understanding where we came from and where we're going, because the things that worked in each one may not work in the next one. So let's talk about how they align. This one's going to have a lot of text on it, and I'm not going to read all these to you. You'll get this, you can kind of go through it. But this is where, I spent time, I went through all these models. I started seeing where they kind of line up. It's not exactly, and also it's not like these growth models are, can you go to one over another? Sure. They're most commonly kind of the way that they're laid out, but people can skip ones. Usually, some people will be doing some at the same time. Which is dangerous in its own right when you have too many focuses. So it's not one-to-one, but it's pretty close. And so I kind of started seeing where these models line up top with what they do with their different stages. And then I fleshed this one out. This one I'm not reading, but this is one that I took this, and this is what informed what I'm going to go through, which is what is common when you start going through these switchbacks from one phase to another. And I kind of just went through each one of these. I read up on what each model was. I kind of put that through my own lens of my own experience and mapped them together where they most went like. And like you see in like Greiner's model, there's one stage that kind of floats more over across multiple ones, but that could be true of any of these in your experience. So again, not going to read that. You can come back to this one later. But what it did is it informed this. When I go through each one of these stages, what's different needs and opportunities when I go from one to another, and what should I be prepared for? And these are going to be, this is totally skewed by the ones that I struggled with the most. This is by no means not all of them, but these are the ones that I saw the most common. And some of them I observed other people go through and had to coach them through or lead them through, or some of them I went through myself, and had to kind of work through those changes. So I want to ask you, I kind of laid this out where the Zuora model was, and hopefully you thought about where's your company. So real quick, just put 1 through 6 in there. Where do you think your company is right now in this growth? Prove the idea, product, market, business, vision, industry. When you look at this, where do you feel your company is? So I'll give a few minutes for some people to add in there. So Richard, sounds like maybe you're at a startup. We've got some people that are 5 or 6. Yeah, I would say PayPal, pretty big.
Yeah. If we don't have the vision sorted out, we got problems.
That's true. But it's an important thing because, like, think about like Blockbuster. Blockbuster was a huge company.
Example.
They were at 6. Blockbuster, they had companies that fed Blockbuster, and then along comes something streaming.
Yeah.
And they couldn't switch. They could not pivot. Because they basically, what they needed to do is go back and come up with a new idea, and they would have to go through almost all these stages again.
Yeah.
Which has its own challenge. Going through these stages after you've already been through them and kind of gotten to one point, that's even harder.
Yeah. Tommy, it even gets a bit more interesting. There's a documentary, ironically, on Netflix about it, that Blockbuster actually created Blockbuster Online. There was actually a service. They were going in that direction. But then I think the CEO from 7-Eleven or something like came on board and like, why don't we put popcorn and soda and do that? And then it's just
all it takes. That's all it takes.
I'm like, incredible.
That's the last Blockbuster in it. I think that's
there you go.
It's a great documentary.
Like that. It was great and it just blows you. And then you start to think Blockbuster, Nokia, like you could just go down the list, right?
Yep. It is. Somebody was talking the other day and they were talking about an industry. I can't remember what it was, but they're talking about an industry and lamenting that it was going to go. And I'm like, listen, we don't have horse and buggies anymore, and that's a good thing. Sometimes something has to go away, and it's and we don't like it.
New things will come up. New things that we've never even thought about will come up.
So let me ask you the same question, but think about your target customer. Now, so let's take PayPal, Matt. You guys have a lot of customers, but there's probably one that when I say, who's your go-to target customer, where are they? Are they in a different stage than you are? That's always an interesting one. So think about where you guys are and where do you think your target customer typically is in their growth stage? I'll tell you ours. Ours is around the 2 to 3 mark. We get a lot of modernization projects. Somebody already went through prove the idea and they've gotten seed money or they've gotten enough revenue to where, all right, I need to rebuild my product to expand to my market that I'm going to go after. We get a lot of those type of products. We get a lot of people in the 4, 5, and 6, big companies that are, writing new products. So we have them a little bit all over.
Hey, Tommy, this is Kumar.
Yeah, so I have a question in the whole process. So when is the right time to start your operations in your business?
To start
especially
new operations?
See, I'm a new entrepreneur, right? Let's say. So I have an idea, and I'm actually starting my selling my idea and bringing my customers into my business, right? Mm-hmm. So my idea, I'm aware, I'm good at idea, but as a part of this process, so I need to invest some money too, right?
Sure.
So I need to invest in my operations. I need to employ, I need to hire people and start, enter operations to be started being an entrepreneur.
Right.
And you need to involve in every set of your operation.
So Kumar, I'm losing you
when
a little bit.
Is the right time?
Yes, I mean he's breaking up a bit.
Hey, Kumar, you're breaking up a little bit.
All this is as a part of, let's say, to my business. That's when I'm actually going into the next stage.
Yeah. Okay. So Kumar, let me do this. I think you're going to see what you want to see in this next thing I'm going to show, which is going through those things. And then also when we get at the end, if you still have some questions about that, I'll answer it in there. So I'll definitely answer that question. Also, I want to admit, I am not an entrepreneur by heart.
Hello, Tommy, you hear me?
Yeah, Kumar, you're kind of coming in and out. So I think I'm going to answer your question in some of my next slides. If not, I'll answer your question at the end. Okay.
Hey, sorry, Tommy, you hear me?
Yeah, you're kind of coming in and out. So Max, if you'll let them know in the chat that we're gonna move on, but I'll answer your question at the end, Kumar. All right, so let's get into this part, which is what I need here is not necessarily what I need here. It can be significantly different. Who I need can be significantly different. And so that's where I really want to talk about these switchbacks, but also from the Greiner's growth model, you have crises, typical crises that you get experience at these that are very similar. So you have a crisis of leadership. Once you've proven your idea and you start having to get into real in the product, two types of different crises of leadership. One could be is the same people who get you to one place can't get you to the other, and you may have to change leadership. The other one is you may be really good at doing this part, but I'm not really good at doing that part. And so maybe you don't leave leadership, but you might need to bring in some support structure. The other thing is that you stop being involved in the day-to-day. When you're small and it's 4 people in a garage, you have your hands on everything. I know everybody. You get to, a couple of hundred people, there's no way for you to know everybody. You shouldn't have your hands in everything. That's actually bad. You should be concentrating on other things. So that's the crisis of leadership, is really that kind of growth of going from the person who can touch everything and is in charge of a lot of things to moving back from that. When you kind of get into, proving the product and you hire a bunch of people and you're moving to new markets, so there's a lot more people in there, then you get in this crisis of autonomy. Again, as a leader, you can't be on top of everybody. It's just, you get too big for that. And you need to allow people to kind of do their jobs and let them do their jobs. So how do you do that? How do you make sure people are aligned with you and trusting you and doing that? Then you get to the crisis of control, because now I've got a bunch of people, I've given this autonomy, but now you feel like, I've let go of all that control. How do I make sure that as we get into prove the business, that things are built now out of my purview in a way that they need to be. I gave them autonomy, but there still needs to be something inside there that I can make sure the company doesn't start through it's death by 1,000 slices, where your new HR director starts slowly with good intentions, inching away from where you're doing. So the next one you get is the crisis of red tape. So because then the knee-jerk reaction is, we should put all these processes in place to make sure I have control over everything. And then you do too much of that, and now I have a bunch of red tape and I'm slow. Once you get it to the top, once you've kind of mastered these and you're like, all right, we got to really, then it's a crisis of growth. How do I take that? Now that I've already gotten to this point, how do you get to the next point? Usually when you're going through these first stages, it's exponential growth. Like you're like, bam, bam, bam. Now we're at, we had 10 customers. Now we're at 100 customers. Now we're at 300 customers. Now we're at this much money. And then you kind of reach a plateau, and then you have to do a lot of new things, alliances, merger and acquisition, opening up brand new services, which maybe starts the cycle all over again to grow more. And again, doing that requires different thinking and different people. So let's talk about these first 3 switchbacks, the main ones I want to focus on, because I think those are some of the most critical. So let's talk about when you're going from prove the idea to prove the product. So improve the idea. This is what, when you're in that early stage startup, you're small, you have a very informal structure. You probably wear multiple hats. Colleen can attest to that. She was sales, marketing, all sorts of stuff. I did all sorts of things. I remember being in HR meetings going, why am I here? You're building your MVP. I need to get something. I have to get this idea out as quick as possible, because you're burning through money. And this money usually is internal money. Like it's your friends and family, it's your credit cards. Usually it's a low fidelity. You don't want to pre-optimize. If you try to build the perfect thing, you're probably not going to make it. You're going to run out of money. You're striving for those initial sales. That is the first thing. Get somebody, prove your ideas, get somebody who will say, that's a good idea, and I'll give you some money for it. Anaga, you got a question?
Yes. So I have a question about the previous slide. Crisis of leadership and autonomy. Where do you see role of agile coach or scrum master or people who do that type of job?
So let me get to that. So each one of these crises is matching up with where we're going from these switchbacks, and I'm going to talk to that in these next slides.
Awesome.
Okay.
Thank you.
And if I don't get to what you were kind of looking for, we can talk about that once I get through these slides. So we're at prove the idea, initial sales. Also, this is where your culture starts emerging. But it's really easy to do because it's, 10, 15 people, and again, you touch everybody. You're probably, also working late nights and stuff, and everybody's passionate about it. And it's kind of easy to kind of get a culture. It starts to emerge that way. But then as I move to prove the product, now I've got some initial sales and now I'm getting a lot of feedback and my customers want new things, but the scrappy way I built my previous product isn't going to support it. So I have to really invest in the product itself. I'm probably getting a larger team, hiring some devs and engineers to build it out. Structures start to emerge. As I hire more people, there has to be more structure now. I can't talk to everybody directly. You start getting functional leaders, maybe not official departments yet, by functionally like your lead dev from the very beginning when there was 4 of you and one person was technical. He's now kind of your default CIO. You may not call him that, but he's becoming that because he's hiring engineers and he is the one talking to all the engineers. Now you have this expanding roadmap. Customers are now coming in and saying, man, this is great. I love what you do. Could you do this? Could you do that? And you have to be smart about that because you can pursue, like a lot of times because they're your first customers, you'll do anything they tell you. Oh, I wish your product did this. Great. Let's do this. And you spend all this time and money and you're like, okay, maybe that wasn't the best place to put our money. Did other customers want that? Also sometimes you'll say, hey, customer, would you pay for this if I build it? And they go, yeah. And then you build it and they go, nah. So you have to be careful at this point in time. Your solution needs to be more scalable because now I'm building on top of it. I'm building new functionality, new services. This is where I see a lot of people have to do a rewrite if they, and it's okay. A modernization effort of the low fidelity scrappy thing is not going to get me to the next stage. Growing customer base. You might, you are probably hiring more salespeople. You might be looking at customer success people to kind of keep your customers happy. And thinking in new different ways. And now your culture starts to get embedded because now new people are showing up who weren't there in the fun, basement days. And the way they see everybody act now starts dictating how they act. And you may not be doing it, on purpose because you probably aren't really, at this point in time, you values and stuff like that, but it's kind of, you're still this scrappy little, company. But you need to be aware that, no matter if you're doing it on purpose or not on purpose, your culture is being embedded now in every new person you hire and how they see you act. So what happens in the switch is the seeds of the formal organization are being created. Leadership starts to emerge. Now, sometimes the people that were great and a leader when there was 15 of you aren't necessarily great when there's 100 of you. Your best developer, not always a great leader. And that's where you start, maybe first starts feeling the pains of what we call right people, right seats. And I've grown to hate that phrase because it's been sometimes used to move people or get people out of right. But it is, it is needed when you have these switchbacks. It is sometimes a necessary thing. You'll start feeling that right now. Also, technical debt may need to be addressed. Now, some technical debt is okay. There's a lot of times where I might do a suboptimal thing to move the business further. I just need to know the impact of that. But a lot of times is when you start trying to build on something shaky is when you'll start feeling a lot of those sins of the past will catch up with you. And it might need new skill sets. Some guy who was really great at writing a small little app is not great at writing an enterprise application. And you may have to hire, new engineers. And it gets a little sticky because the guy who helped get you there, who may be the CIO by default because he was the technical guy, he's hiring people who are actually smarter than him, which is not bad, but sometimes it's very threatening. And I've seen this a bunch of times. You also may need formal product management right now. Now, like I said, if you just listen to all your customers, what they ask you for, it's kind of like I think it was Henry Ford said, if I'd listened to my customers, I just would have built a faster horse. You may need some more formal product management. Does that mean a different person in charge of that? Maybe. Or just you need to kind of be more specific about it. You need to really improve the customer feedback cycles and improve the, shorter, but also they need to be better and you need to be thinking through them. Everything that comes in is not a great idea. You need to be a little bit more fortuitous about vetting them. Where in the beginning, you might be throwing everything, all the spaghetti against the wall to see if it sticks. And then lastly, values and vision and core values start to be tested here. You may not even have formally noted them. A lot of companies that come in early days, they don't even it's kind of like, well, everybody knows that because there's 4 of us and we all started together. But this is where it becomes to be tested, because you're hiring people who weren't there at the passion part of it, where we're all working for nothing. And because I love this. Now I'm hiring somebody like, you're hiring me because you're paying me a paycheck. And I like what you're doing, but I don't know if it's my passion. I'd probably go to do something different next time. And how they align to your core values is very important. So once we move from product, so let's say we move that, and this is where, this is hard as a practitioner. I've seen so many people get disillusioned because as they went from being super important when we were small, and as we grow, we bring new people in, and now people are over them who, wait a minute, I've been here for years, and now this new person is now directing me. And that's hard. I've been in that position and it sucks, and I've had to coach people through that. So that's what I was saying is, I don't care where you are. I don't care if you're boots on the ground, be aware of this. Because you're going to feel this. If you are a leader, be aware of this, because you are the one really leading this. And if you're a coach, be prepared to coach people through this. When somebody does get demoted or laterally moved out of where they were, be ready to coach them. When, people start talking about technical debt, be ready to coach them about that. And when is a good time to do that? Maybe you need to revisit your values, core values and vision. And if they, if they need to change, hopefully they don't, maybe they just need to be reinvigorated, and make sure you are hiring for that. So let's go to the next one. Now I'm going to go from prove the product to prove the market. Yep. Kumar. You muted, buddy. There you go.
Yeah. Sorry. Yeah. So what would be the capital initial capital investment and the limitations to prove the product?
Like an actual number?
I mean, is there we have a certain initial capital to run the whole business, right? But sometimes we don't know where to cut off that initial capital. We keep putting our money. Finally, we see that all money is going, out of hand, and you end up, not able to run your operations and to go to the next switchback. Right.
So Kumar, I hear you. The money side of this is a whole different type of presentation. So I'm going to put a pin in that. But what I want to do is when we're done, I have I want to point you to smarter people than me in that one. Because I am not an entrepreneur by heart. But you're absolutely right. The funding model at the beginning of Prove the Idea is where I was probably doing angel investment, stuff like that. When you get Improve the Product, this is probably where you're looking at seed A money. You're getting that first seed money from a venture capital, sometimes a private investor, but that's dangerous in itself. That's another thing. So remember, when you get venture capital comes in sometimes and they start telling you what to do. That really tests your core values. When somebody who and I can say this happened at LeanKit. Somebody came and gave us $17 million. And the guy who was over the venture capital was a lean guy. He loved lean. Well, then he moved on to something else. And the guy who was over our venture capital at that point in time was a money guy. And he started saying, I don't care about this lean stuff. This numbers don't add up, And I had a friend who went from many startups, and he said, when they take the free Cokes away, it's when I leave. That's when they start, but Kumar, that's, it's a silly, analogy, but it is. It's when the money starts becoming the more important thing than the product, but it sometimes it has to. So Kumar, let's put a pin in that and let's you and I talk about that afterwards.
Sure.
Okay. So let's get into proving the product or to proving the market. So we have proved the product, which you just talked about, and now we're going to prove the market. I've got a decent product. It's a little bit more solid. I've made more investments in it. It's expanding because I have more of a roadmap. My company's getting bigger. Well, when we go to prove the market, now I'm getting even bigger. You probably see a lot more sales and marketing this time. You probably had when you do approve the product, you usually get a lot more engineering, and you get everybody, but that's where you focus, because I need more people to help me build more product. But now prove the market is I got to sell to more people. So sales and marketing comes in, and that creates a whole new interesting thing, because again, I probably hire salespeople who don't give a crap about what they're selling. They're just good at sales. And that gets weird. That gets, I hear things like, I could sell ice to Eskimos. Yeah, but then a couple of days later, the Eskimos are like, what the hell am I going to do with this ice? So it's an interesting thing. Your structures are now formalizing. Now you're actually getting departments, and you have department heads and things like that. And where you might have just thrown people because they were available, like, oh, Max, you're not doing anything. You're in charge in HR. Now that's going to be okay for a while, but when we go to our next phase, that may not be okay. You're expanding your offerings. So this is where, I'm trying to get new markets. Your customer base gets more diverse. You refine your market type. This is where you might abandon some people you did before. And I've seen this a couple of times, just people I love, like, God, I love that little company, but that's not who I'm going after anymore. And I got to let them go. I got to cut them. And you might do that through actual letting people go, or like at LeanKit, when they decided they were going to go after enterprise, they priced everybody out. And it sucks because I hate watching, like we'd see Glassdoor stuff and other comments, like, oh my gosh, I can't believe they did this pricing. They're going to lose a customer. We're kind of like, well, that's kind of what we meant to do. Sorry, buddy.
Tommy, sorry.
No
5
worries.
minutes.
Okay.
5 minutes.
Let me go fast. Your culture starts being led by middle management. You're no longer in charge, in charge of everything. And so the people that are actually in charge, it doesn't matter what you're saying here, your culture starts dictating by this new group of people in there. So let me go through these. Success, the process structure starts to show its weak points. You're going to start to see kind of things that worked well now aren't working, and they need this more, departmental things. The cross-departmental communication becomes more complex. I have more people. More diverse teams introduces more dependencies. Now where we could have all just sat in a war room and build something, I now have multiple teams that are dependent on each other, depending on how I structured the teams and how I structured my product. The next thing is you may have to start pursuing previous customers. I talked about that. And also magical thinking can start to set in. We used to do this where we would be in a meeting as exec team and we'd go, well, so let it be written, so let it be done. We'd put it out someplace in Slack and think everybody's doing it now. That's magical thinking. Because then if the people that are actually executing mid-management boots on the ground aren't actually doing it, you're gonna have to reinforce that. You have to reinforce that over and over again. So let's go through this last one real quick, and then I will hang around for questions, but I want to get for people have to sign off. When you go from prove the market to prove the business, now specialized departmental skills. This is where I'm hiring people. I hire an HR person. I hire a marketing person. More mature business practices come in. More departmental autonomy is coming in. You focus on financial stability. And so a lot of the fun stuff starts coming into question. That was fun and we didn't mind spending money on it, but it probably wasn't a good idea. Cross-departmental optimization is something that is key at this point in time. Your sales life cycle needs to be optimized. Now you really look closely on obtaining customers and customer churn and things like that. Strategy and execution starts getting a lot of separation. There's more people, there's more layers between things now. And so strategy is up here, and then there's how actually things are being done. And that gap can really increase. So, you may need to remove and replace people. People may start to leave because it's no fun anymore. And now we have to do the business part, and I like the fun part. You might also have to introduce a lot more processes, and it will start slowing down delivery. You might, worry about getting things to market in time. Trimming the fat can lend to tenured employees lamenting the good old days. Remember when we used to not care about this stuff? And it's hard not to do that, but it's just sometimes smart business if you want to grow. More diverse team introduced dependency. So now you get into dependency management. There's a whole thing about that in itself. New people hired for skills that may not align to the passion of the vision and the passion. And so you have to be very diligent about that, because again, they can start to erode those initial vision and core values over time. So let me wrap up, and then I'm going to stick around for questions. So I just wanted to get you, educate your companies on these models. I would read more into each one of these models. Some will speak to you more than others. Like I said, the climb spoke to me, but I got other people who like some of these other ones. Determine where your company is. Kind of figure out where you are. What are you currently struggling with? What crises do you see? When you see these models, was there anyone you went, oh yeah, we're working on that right now? That's good. That's important. These aren't new. There's plenty of documentation around it there, and then how to address it. Use multiple approaches to mitigate. You're going to have to use everything in your little coaching box. And what worked at one stage won't work at the other stage. And so you have to start thinking, like, there's been tons of times where I'm like, this works all the time. Why is this not landing? And I have to rethink. This worked great there. And if I ever go to a company that's at this stage again, I can pull that back out of my toolbox, but it's no longer working anymore. I need to retire that and bring out something new. And as coaches, sometimes we get stuck a little bit. And be mindful of what's coming up next. You can start to see the seeds of things going, like when the free Cokes go away. I saw one where I was given a company credit card and nobody cared what the heck I did with it. And then suddenly, I had to turn in expense reports, and then suddenly there were caps on everything, and suddenly there was this. I start smelling, we're getting into the business side, and this is going to be important. And I was in a meeting just the other day where somebody lamented about, remember when we didn't have to do this? I was like, I know exactly where we are, and I know how I need to start thinking and coaching people and leading people. So with that, thank you guys. I know I kind of had to rush there at the end, and I apologize for that. Here's all my contact information. Feel free to email me. I like expanding my network on LinkedIn, so feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. Look at my O'Reilly stuff. If you're interested in an Acklen work, we do Agile teams as a service and staff augmentation. I do a lot of webinars on our own as well, and then the user group and the conference. And with that, Max, I'm going to officially say I'm done. But I will stick around as long as people want to ask questions.
Absolutely. Before I ask for action, let's do it now. Round of applause by everybody. And one favor before people log off, let's do a Brady Bunch picture kind of thing to post. So if you don't mind, prepare yourself to turn on the camera. And as you're turning on your camera for the Brady Bunch picture, I'd like to say thank you, Tommy, for your presentation. I think the main thing is always to learn something new. I learned something new. Did folks out there learn something new? I learned something new today. Okay. And I think it's so key when we talk about growth and where we're at with companies. So, thank you for turning on your cameras. There you go. Let's take it now. Okay. You can smile, you can wave, you can act as if you're having a good time. Yay. And there you go. Oh, I got a nice one of some of you. There you go. Okay. Thank you, folks. And Tommy, you offered to stick around for questions if people had questions.
Absolutely.
So folks, if you don't have questions, stay safe, stay agile. We'll catch you at the next one. I put in the link in the chat, our CA conference, November 9th. We're not having a leader SIG because we don't want to compete with CA. So I'd be excited to see people there virtually or in person. Okay. CA conference Wednesday, November 9th. Check out the site. And questions. I think, Tommy, we have to go straight to
Kumar,
Anaga's question.
Oh, Anaga, sorry.
Anaga's question first about where do Scrum Master Agile coaches plug in here? Where do they plug in?
So, if you are a team coach, you're really kind of having to, being aware of this is good to know because your teams are going to be affected. When you, let's say, and normally you're probably not bringing in a Scrum Master when you're small. That's where the Agile Fluency Model, people have, sometimes when I've kind of mapped that out, they said, oh, that really doesn't map because it's not like you grow through Agile Fluency. You can be Agile from day one. Yeah, but you're a different type of Agile. When it's just 4 of you in a room, you're a different type of Agile. You probably don't even have a Scrum Master. So when you get to a certain point, you start bringing in people that are officially in charge of maximizing the value of the teams through lots of different things that Scrum Master do. The thing you have to think about is when I get into the grow the product, that's where you start bringing in specialty people and people who maybe have enterprise level, product knowledge. And I've seen an us versus them. That happened. It happened at Linkit. Like I had to have therapy sessions with the old school guys and the new school guys because the old school guys had built an app. Like I would say, hey, I wish Linkit did this, and they would go boom, and then we could be out. But they built that kind of with some baling wire and duct tape. And so when they were ready to go to prove the product, they hired a bunch of new architects to come in. We moved from .NET to Node. We've hired a bunch of new architects in. And these architects came in and would constantly just piss all over the old way, that ball of mud, that blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, listen, that thing is why you're here. It paid for you. You need to give some respect to that. And so
added value at some point.
Yeah. And so I, as a coach, had to coach them. I had to sit them down and say, all right, guys, you need to understand that we are moving to a new technology. And I know you love this old thing, and it's the jalopy that got us to college. We got to let it go. It's not a family mobile anymore. And I got more people. And then I had to go to the other guys. It's like, dude, chill it out. respect what's there. Let's work together. What you need is you need all the knowledge of how these guys know how the product built. They understand the market a lot better than you do, but you need to marry that to this new product knowledge. So that's a key example. And that's just one of where you'll have to coach the teams themselves and then executives. So, a lot of executives, get moved around when you go, like, especially when you go from prove the market to prove the product. That's where you bring in, or sometimes improve the product, but around there is when you'll bring in executives that are skilled at being an executive rather than passionate about what you did. And that person who was the CTO before now is either moved laterally or moved under. And that's hard. I've had that happen to me. I'm no longer in the room where all the decisions are made. And you'll have to coach that person. They need to be coached and they need to see the value in what they're doing. Sometimes they need to see the value in moving on. Maybe this isn't the best place for you. So those are just two examples, but each one of those little purple boxes that showed you what could happen is a coachable moment at some level in the company. Yeah. So does that make sense?
Yeah. So is it okay to follow up with another question? Like, sure. See agile coaches equipped to do this today, and do they have training to do this today?
So remember when I asked, are you an executive coach or a team coach? It depends. Like when I was first a team coach, I was really good at team stuff because I had been a member of the team. I was a developer. I had led QA. And so I could roll up my sleeves. So if you know the coaching stances, the little matrix of coaching stances where your responsibility versus or output versus, coaching growth, when you're at a team, you're usually a lot more on output. I'm actually with the team and we're focused on outputs, not all the time. When you get an executive level, you get less from that and you're more about coaching and growth and things like that. But also I have to change. Like if I'm coaching a CEO, he doesn't give a crap about the word sprint or scrum master, any of that. He cares about money, and I have to coach him a different way. I found that when I started talking to leadership, I just stopped using all my agile words because they don't like it. I use lean words because lean is something that's been around for 100 years. It's taught in companies, The Goal, if you've ever read The Goal by Eli Goldrath, that's a great book because it taught me a lot of how to take what I know works. There you go. Aaron's got it. And translate it over into something that matters to them, which is, all these things about optimizing systems and stuff like that. So I will definitely tell you that, if you want to move from a team coach to hire executive coach, you have to expand your knowledge. And it's just not about professional questions. Like I am not a professional coach. I will say, and I don't, there's great things about that. So if one of you are, I'm not, but you can powerful questions only get you so far. There's sometimes when you have to say, roll up your sleeves and get some shit done. And that's what makes a lot of sense at the top of the food chain. Those people there, it's about, we have to get stuff done at the end of the day. And that's where, like I said, I had this team coach who was like, oh, we should, spend all this money on making the teams better and this, that, and the other, And I, if we break even, I'm happy. I'm like, but that's naive because what happens when things dry up? I need to have some in the bank. So that's, that's a person who's great at coaching a team because the teams love them, but they're horrible at coaching at executive level because you would never say that as an executive.
Yeah.
So
you've got to have a balance. You've got to have a good balance. So there's Aaron that had a question, but just very, very quickly as we get to that, Tommy, I also noticed that on your slides, there was a part where it was the embedded culture at the bottom. And I think that an agile coach, even a scrum master in a lot of ways, can have a big influence on culture, right? What kind of team culture do you want to have? The autonomy, self-organizing and managing teams and all of that. I think there's a big opportunity there for companies that can afford to have someone, to hire someone to have that kind of a focus, right?
Think about it this way. So when you get into that culture, your company should have somewhere, hopefully, their vision and their core values, published, and this is what we go by. Well, think about those like the Agile Manifesto. Those are the core values and principles.
Yeah.
So when you say, why do we have stand-ups? Don't say you have stand-ups to have stand-ups. Why do we answer 3 questions? That's a practice. Map it back to core values. So then if you're trying to teach culture in a company, so like a lot of companies will have integrity. Like, okay, what does that mean? Well, doing the right thing, even though it hurts. Okay. Tell me a time when that happened. So, I was at a company that, due to some things that the executives did, and then just the world happening, they had to do some layoffs. And a lot of the people they were laying off were contractors, which I can just, if you're a contractor, I can say, I don't like your shoes, and I can lay you off, and I don't have to give you any money, I have to do anything. But they had treated these people like full-time employees for so long, and they'd been with the company for so long. They're like, I feel bad. And some of them had just been hired. Like they just expanded and suddenly had to contract. And so their CEO took out a personal loan, not a company loan, a personal loan to pay these people severance, which he didn't have to do.
Nope.
But he's like, I do the right thing even when it hurts. Yeah. And I tell that story all the time when I'm talking about, all right, if you tell me all these lofty vision and principles, show me where you've done it.
Exactly.
So it's the same thing. You do that in Agile all the time. You kind of show a practice mapping back to a value, show how a company acts versus its values. Because there's a lot of times where I can say, you're not acting like that value. I don't see that.
You're just talking. You're just talking.
All right, Aaron?
Wait, yes, actually, I mean, just say your question, Aaron. Just go off mute and say a question. I can't find it anymore.
The one challenge that I've always had with teams in bringing Agile in is story points. People don't have a very good understanding about what they are, what they represent. They always want to relate them to time, and they want to have it be like for them personally and not like in the aggregate. And I've tried a number of different ways of phrasing it. I'm just wondering if you have a better set of words or something I could riff off of to help my next team with this.
So that is a rabbit hole we need to be careful of. So Aaron, do this. Hook up with me on LinkedIn, and I can give you a longer answer later. So I I'm going to give you an answer that's not going to be very helpful until I explain it. I'll give you a through story. I love telling stories. So when I came to Acklen, they were using Fibonacci points, story points, and estimating and breaking down sprint backlogs into task and aerial estimating. And they're horrible at estimating. And I sat with the teams for a little while, and they said, what are you going to do to help improve estimating? I said, we're just going to stop doing it. And they were like, what? And I'm like, I didn't mean that, but I did. I was like, listen, no more story points, small, medium, and large. And I don't like larges. I want you to get better at breaking work down. That was the problem, is they were just taking work from the clients, how the clients gave it to them, and just saying, okay, we'll work on this. And sometimes they give them something that's like a month long, and they try to break it down in weird ways to kind of make it smaller, but it was more functional chunks than slices. So when anybody comes to me, estimating is one of them, but there's tons of different downstream problems that I say, you need to go upstream, and how you break down stories informs so much of downstream. And so I would first look at that. And then also, I'm a big lean and Kanban guy. Like, we're a Kanban shop. We do Scrum when we need to with certain clients, but I am a big fan of cycle time and throughput, because cycle time and throughput rules everything. It is hours, and hours are okay. Hours are not bad. I know we get into this thing, hours are bad. The reason hours are bad is because estimates are not plans. And if I give you an estimate in hours, you think it's a plan. As long as there's a separation, like velocity is what you use to plan with, not hours. Velocity is an empirical gauge of how much you can do over a time box. Yeah. And as long as that's what you're using to plan with, I don't care what you're using to estimate with, because those are separated. I keep them separate. But that's why we try to t-shirt sizes and story points. We try to obfuscate it, but everybody puts it in hours. One is, I've just given up that ghost. Everybody's going to make it in hours. But as long I strive more to keep stories small, so then the estimates can be a little bit better. I don't try to be super accurate with my estimates. That's why, like, I don't like the Fibonacci sequence, because it tries to make you a little bit more accurate than you can be. And it gives you a sense of accuracy and confidence that you don't really have. And the third one is just keep whatever you use separate from your planning mechanism. If you keep it separate, then a lot of that pain goes away. So that's a little off the cuff answer, but if you connect with me on LinkedIn, we can have more conversation about it. I have a whole presentation just on that.
And if I may just say, this was such a good question that so many people struggle with. And in my 12 years, I've gotten to the point that the whole thing is an estimate is always going to be wrong. So don't waste that much time. And if I may say, just a little plug in for a team that's using a Kanban approach, so they really focus on throughput. This team got to the point that they started to estimate all their work in very similar chunks. And it came down to be an average of 2 days of work. And somehow, whatever the work was that they had to estimate, they would break down their stories into 2 days. And then all this churn of estimation disappeared. And I've not, like, that was a unique thing that I saw, but it was so effective that I'm almost going to start to share that as a best practice across our company. Like all this 1, 2, 3, 5, everything, like a team can organically feel what is about 2 days of work, right? If they do it enough times, and then all of a sudden, that's your standard practically for that team. Now, it worked for that team. I don't know if it worked for other teams.
The one downside I've seen of that is when you rate work down too small, it starts losing its inherent value. And you have to, a bunch of stories have to be delivered to make value.
Yes.
That's it. So when you do that, and that's perfectly okay to do, as long as you make sure I am tracking value in one place and effort in another place. So when cards get down to probably 2 days, they are probably not a fully functional feature. It's probably a part of that feature. As long as somewhere the actual thing that makes money.
Yes.
When a card gets done,
can be demoed.
Not even demoed, because I can demo stuff that doesn't make me money. The money. Remember, until it's in production and making somebody money, it's like a tree falling in the woods. I'm Janet Jackson. What have you done for me lately?
What are you doing?
But I do agree that breaking down work is the most important thing. Doc Norton, who I love, has a great quote that I use a lot of times, which is, it's not a question of, is it small enough? Is there anything more I can take away? Like it's, a lot of people say, get it small enough to fit in a sprint. No, get it as small to where it still has some value, but there's nothing more to take away.
Yeah.
And I have a whole presentation on that we can talk about later. That's one of the webinars I do. So when I do my webinar on story slicing, I'll send it to Max and he can post it out to the group.
Awesome. Thank
so
you.
we missed
any other questions? Oh, okay, sorry.
The gentleman who was who he's left now, Anum, I think was his name.
Oh, Kumar. Was it Kumar that had a business approach and all the
Max, do you guys have like an entrepreneur center or something like that, like a startup foundry or something?
You know what? That sounds great, but no, we do not.
Okay. So
no, we do not.
If anybody knows him, get them connected to me, and I can at least connect them. Like there's one here in Nashville, but they do a lot of stuff online.
Yes.
What he needs is one of those jumpstart foundries or an entrepreneur center. That's what he needs, is kind of talking about. And they talk, I talk about this presentation to them because they're all in that first stage.
Yes.
And they kind of got mad at me because I went in there and somebody, they're all, I have all these great ideas. And I say, listen, statistics tell me that in 2 years, 75% of you aren't here. That's just
and
math.
That's not an easy thing to hear. That's not an easy thing to hear.
Some of your babies are ugly. But
okay, that's more dramatic.
But learning these things, like I just told you about that, which I think that's what Kumar was getting to, is like, what are the things I need to do? Like not pursuing everything. You still need to manage money, right? Being aware of burn rate. There's a lot of things you can do that give you a better chance of survival. Then it's all about your idea. Like there's plenty of times, like clients come to me all the time, like, I think that is the dumbest idea I've ever heard. But you know what? I thought Sharknado was a stupid idea. So it's not my job.
And that made a lot of money. Yep. Sharknado made a lot of money for some reason. There are things that make a lot of money that might seem really stupid.
Years ago, somebody came to me and said, not to me, but to our company, and they were too much in the startup phase. We would have never worked with them. But it was one of those ideas, like nobody will do that. It was about loaning your car out. So like instead of going to a rental car, it was the sharing economy for that. And I thought, this is the dumbest idea I've ever heard. And now there's like 20 apps to do it.
There's 20 apps to do it. Honestly, I am planning to do that with my car support because I only use my car 20% of the time now.
So this is why I say I'm not an entrepreneur.
Oh, Tommy, this was good. This is good to stick around and chat a bit, but we can't stay here forever. Right. So are there any other questions? People want to come off mute. Some people might just have logged on and are jogging outside and everything, and I forgot that they're still here. If there's no other questions, let us call it a day then. Okay. Thank you, Tommy, again for being here. I see the claps there from Alfredo. I remember you from GM, Alfredo. Yeah, you look familiar. It's nice to see some familiar faces. Sherry, Clement, everybody. Cool. Okay, folks, stay safe, stay agile, and thank you, Tommy. We'll talk soon. Okay.
So I will send slides to
Send me
Max.
the
He'll get them
deck.
distributed.
Yes.
And then again, hit me up on LinkedIn or email me. I love to talk about this more. Thanks, everybody.
Excellent. Take care, folks. Bye,
Bye.
Aaron. Bye, folks.